Allie and Missy, I'm Kimberly Castro. Welcome to 5 Minute Coach. So what I noticed right from the beginning is how well put together you both look. Nice turnout. You both look relaxed, happy to be out there. Missy, it looks like you, or Allie, it looks like you have a plan. I'm going to call Missy a she, and I'm hoping that's right. I like the choice of making a big circle there. Gives you both an opportunity to look around and gives you enough time to pick up your canter before your first fence. I like this canter a lot. Stays very steady. She doesn't rush, she doesn't slow down, and the fence meets her perfectly. That's beautiful. Coming to your next one, I noticed a couple things that we can work on. So let's watch this fence and then we'll talk about it. So that fence was a little bit of a long spot, which means, Allie, that you got left behind just a bit, and that Missy ended up landing on the back side of that fence, a little on the forehand. So what this points out to me is that Missy could benefit from learning two things. One is that she could learn to be more adjustable in her body and in her stride length. So that means that when she comes down to the fence, she could either compress her body, shorten her stride length, and put in an extra stride and get to the base of that fence, or she could have lengthened her stride to get to the base of that fence, and you wouldn't have had the long spot. Another thing this fence shows me is the second part of what I'd like you to work on, which is that Missy would benefit from learning how to adjust her balance. When she's coming down this hill, she needs to learn how to rock back a little bit and put her weight more over her hind end than over her front end. And that'll mean that not only is she more balanced coming down the hill, but that with the weight in her hind end, she'd be more prepared to jump at the bottom of that hill. Both of these things, both adjustability and balance, are improved by improving Missy's suppleness and flexibility. So at the end of this video, I'm going to give you exercises to improve her flexibility and suppleness, and that'll naturally improve her balance and will give her the tools that she needs to become more adjustable in her stride length. So we'll watch the rest of the video. I'm going to point out areas where she's a little off balance and she could benefit from changing her balance. I'll point out those areas where she could learn to be more adjustable. And then, so that way you can recognize these parts, and then we'll do some homework. So because of this last fence, when there's a little bit of a long spot, she's a little on the forehand, and that's why this fence, it was good, but it's kind of popped over it a little bit, and that's why I felt a little bit awkward. Now she's coming back uphill, so her balance is a little bit more evenly distributed, at least more toward her hind end, and all these next fences turn out great because her balance is a little bit more uphill. That was a beautiful fence, as was that one. Now coming around to this next one, this is important. I'll pause it here as well so we can talk about this one. So that fence is a perfect example of a chip. A horse that chips a stride before a fence, and that's that kind of jerky feeling. It means that what they've done, instead of compressing their body and shortening their stride length to make room for how close they are to the fence, they end up keeping that same stride length that they had before, and they just chop off the end of the canter stride. So you no longer have a fluid movement off the ground and over the jump, and instead you have that kind of chopped off half canter stride before the fence. The next two jumps will, because they happen in quick succession, we'll play them and then talk about them after. Okay, so what I find really interesting about that first one, that's another perfect example, but this time it's an example of Missy adjusting her own balance. What she did there was, because you're coming a little bit more downhill, and she'd had that experience over fence number 2, where it was kind of downhill, she got on the forehand and had a little bit of a long spot. Over this one, she decided to adjust her own balance, and by doing that, in order to do that, she came back to the trot. when horses are first learning to adjust their balance, they often come back to the trot. As horses get stronger and more experienced, they can stay cantering for that fence. But for right now, that's her way of doing that, and we'll reward her for that. When she comes down to a fence and does come back to the trot, it's not a big deal. Just make sure you can kind of put yourself back together, put your leg on, and support her, and stay soft, nice and soft over that jump, and she'll learn that rebalancing like that is fine. As she gets stronger, she'll stay at the canter when she rebalances. And the suppling exercises I'll give you at the end will get her stronger and more capable of doing that. I don't worry too much about her being on the left lead. It's not a big deal. She'll learn as she gets more flexible and soft. She'll learn how to switch her leads on her own. And that was a very nice round. So, let me pause this again. So, homework exercises. First, what I'd like you to do is I would like you to you can do this at the walk, get on a circle, maybe someone can help you in the middle of the ring, get on a circle, and I'd like you to move Missy's haunches both into the circle and then out of the circle, and into the circle and then out of the circle, and that will help her become more flexible in her back and her rib cage, and that's part of what she needs in order to stretch out and push for a longer stride or compress her body and have a shorter stride. So that flexibility in her back and her rib cage is important because adjusting her stride length requires adjusting the shape of her body. And she can't adjust the shape of her body until she's flexible enough to do that. Then what I'd also like you to do is, a second part of homework, set up poles, canter poles, and you can make them 10 feet apart. And of course, I can't judge accurately the length of her stride, so play by ear a little bit and see how she fares with each of these poles. But I'd like you to set canter poles 10 feet apart, and I'd like you to do first just 2 poles, so each about 10 feet in the middle, and come around and canter those poles. Then I'd like you to push them out to 11 feet, and so you're asking her to have a little bit longer canter stride. Then bring them back to 10 and add a third pole. So now you have 3 poles with 10 feet in between. If she does that well, then you can stretch them out to 11 feet between. And then you can even try 12 feet in between and see if you can get her to stretch out her canter stride a little bit. You can also then, if you're successful at that, you can also shorten the poles. And with the poles maybe 9 feet apart, you can come in and have her canter in a smaller canter. See if you can keep her cantering over those poles. So do some haunches in and out, being nice and flexible with her rib cage and her back. And then once she's more flexible like that, you can start asking her to stretch out her canter a little bit over poles, and that'll transfer over to jumping. You'll notice a huge difference. So good luck with that, and certainly keep me updated and let me know how it goes. And of course, you can always message if you have questions. Thanks.